The day my daughter was born should have been the happiest day of my life. Instead, it became the day I buried my husband after everyone said he died in a terrible plane crash. For 20 years I lived as a widow, raised our daughter alone, and never questioned the official story. Then one ordinary Friday evening, my daughter walked through the front door, holding a photograph that should never have existed. She looked at me with trembling hands and whispered, "Mom, I met Dad today." What happened after that destroyed everything I believed about love, trust, and the man I spent 20 years mourning. I still remember the smell of disinfectant in the hospital room when the doctor placed my newborn daughter into my arms. I was exhausted, but happier than I had ever been. Before I could even call my husband, 2 airline officials entered my room with pale faces. They explained that his flight had crashed into the mountains shortly after takeoff. There were no survivors. My entire world collapsed before I even had the chance to hold my family together. I named our daughter Emma because it was the name her father had chosen before leaving for his business trip. If stories about family secrets and unbelievable true events keep you thinking long after they end, take a moment to subscribe. There is another incredible story waiting after this one, and you will not want to miss it. The years that followed were filled with sacrifice. I worked 2 jobs, skipped meals so my daughter could attend a good school, and spent every birthday placing fresh flowers beside the memorial built for the victims of the crash. Whenever Emma asked about her father, I showed her photographs and told her how kind, hardworking, and loving he had been. Deep inside, I wished she could have known him instead of hearing stories from someone who still cried herself to sleep every anniversary. Everything changed shortly after Emma turned 20. She had accepted a temporary internship with a technology company in another city. On Friday evening, she rushed through our front door, looking terrified instead of excited. She placed her phone on the kitchen table and showed me a picture she had secretly taken that afternoon. Standing outside a luxury office building was a man with older hair, faint wrinkles, and glasses, but there was no doubt in my mind. It was my husband. The same smile, the same scar above his eyebrow, the same wedding ring I had watched him wear for years. I refused to believe what I was seeing. My heart insisted it was impossible, yet every instinct screamed that the photograph was real. Emma explained she had accidentally bumped into the man while leaving a coffee shop. When she apologized, he stared at her with tears filling his eyes before quickly walking away. Something about his reaction felt deeply personal. She secretly followed him long enough to capture the picture before losing him in traffic. Unable to accept coincidence, I hired a private investigator the following morning. I wanted proof that my daughter had mistaken someone else for my late husband. Instead, the investigator uncovered something horrifying. The man had been living under a different identity for almost 2 decades. He owned several successful companies, expensive properties, and offshore bank accounts. Even more shocking, there was no record connecting him to the victims of the plane crash after the first week following the disaster. The investigator dug deeper into financial records and uncovered a trail that made my hands shake. Months before the crash, my husband had secretly transferred enormous amounts of money into hidden accounts overseas. He'd also purchased fake identification through criminal intermediaries. The plane accident had given him the perfect opportunity to disappear forever, while the entire world believed he was dead. He had abandoned his wife and newborn daughter to start an entirely new life with millions of dollars. If this story has already surprised you, take a second to like and share this video. Every share helps more people discover stories that remind us why the truth always finds its way into the light. Emma refused to let him disappear again. Together with the investigator, we collected documents, photographs, banking records, and witness statements. Then we discovered something even more unbelievable. My husband was preparing to marry another woman who believed he had never been married before. Their wedding was only 6 days away. For 20 years, he had lived as a respected businessman while I struggled to pay bills, and our daughter grew up without a father. We attended the wedding without telling anyone who we were. The ceremony was elegant, filled with wealthy guests and smiling relatives. Just as the officiant asked if anyone objected, Emma stood up holding a thick folder of evidence. Every conversation inside the hall stopped. She calmly walked to the front and introduced herself as the daughter the groom had abandoned 20 years earlier. Then she handed copies of birth certificates, marriage records, photographs, and financial documents to the bride. The room erupted into complete chaos. The bride looked at him with disbelief as he desperately tried to explain himself. Guests began searching his name online while reporters who had been invited by one of the attendees quickly realized the story unfolding before them. Within minutes, the bride removed her engagement ring and walked away without saying another word. Investors, business partners, and friends quietly left the venue as police officers arrived to question him regarding financial fraud and identity crimes uncovered during the investigation. As he stood there surrounded by flashing cameras, he looked directly at me for the first time in 20 years. Tears filled his eyes as he whispered that he had always planned to come back someday. Those words meant nothing anymore. He had missed every birthday, every graduation, every illness, every school performance, and every moment our daughter needed her father. You cannot return decades that were stolen by selfish choices. Months later, the legal system recovered a significant portion of the hidden assets that rightfully belonged to our family. More importantly, Emma finally understood that a parent's love is measured through sacrifice rather than words. She built a successful career using the strength she had learned from watching me survive impossible circumstances. The man who abandoned us lost everything he had spent 20 years building, while the family he left behind finally found peace. If this story touched your heart, remember that lies may survive for years, but truth eventually catches up with everyone. Subscribe for more unforgettable, true-style family stories. And if you believe karma always finds its way home, like this video and share it with someone who believes honesty is worth more than money. He thought disappearing would erase his past. Instead, the daughter he abandoned became the reason the truth finally caught him. Some betrayals steal years, but karma always collects its debt with interest.